Good evening and welcome to Primetime Lawmakers for February 2nd, 2011, the 9th legislative day of the 2011 session. I'm Scott Slade. And coming up in tonight's program, Sunday alcohol sales in Georgia get one step closer as SB 10 easily passes committee. Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed makes a friendly visit to the Capitol. A House committee passes a bill that would allow driver's license exams in English only. We continue our leadership interview series. Tonight, Senate Minority Whip Steve Henson. And we'll be talking transportation tonight. I'll be joined in studio live by Representative Jay Roberts, Chairman of the House Transportation Committee, and Department of Transportation Commissioner Vance C. Smith. All that and more is coming up tonight on Primetime Lawmakers. But first, a Senate committee gives the green light to retail alcohol sales on Sunday. And Wandi Lawson joins us with the latest on Senate Bill 10. Good evening, Wandi.
Good evening, Scott. You know, those who want to allow a local referendum to decide whether or not Sunday alcohol sales are allowed in cities and counties around the state scored a victory today with the passage of SB 10 by the Senate State and Local Governmental Operations Committee. Now, the measure would allow a county or municipality to hold a referendum to ask voters whether or not alcohol sales should be allowed between 12:30 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. on Sundays. From retailers to even one working mom, the only voices at today's meeting actually favored that measure. Senator John Bullock, who sponsors the measure, said that Georgia, along with Connecticut and Indiana, are the only three states that have a statewide ban on Sunday alcohol sales.
Now, I'm not sitting here suggesting that we should always do what everybody else does. But back in 1994-95, pre-Olympics, the General Assembly, looking at everything that the Olympics was going to bring in and looking at the economic impact it was going to have on our community and looking at all of the different aspects of countries coming to our communities, the General Assembly voted then, and they allowed local authorities to do exactly what this bill does, but sell alcoholic beverages at food establishments.
From statistics generated through Kroger customer loyalty cards, we know with certainty that fully 25% of our shoppers now shop our stores on Sunday, and between 9 and 10% of our customers shop only on Sunday. Yet a customer who enters a Kroger, a Publix, a Walmart, or any other retail store in Georgia on Sunday is prohibited from purchasing beer or wine. There should be no mistake for the Kroger company. This issue is about customer service.
I am offering the perspective of working mothers. You heard Horace Hamilton, who sat in this chair just before I, mention how Sunday has become one of their biggest shopping days in Kroger. And I'm going to tell you one reason is because of how many working mothers we have. When you work Monday through Friday, your kids are in school, they come home, you do dinner, you do homework, maybe there's lessons. Saturday is always games or the birthday parties. We go to church Sunday, and that's the time. That's the time I can leisurely go through the grocery store, plan the week ahead, and if part of that is we want to pick up a bottle of wine for a dinner party, or my husband wants me to grab beer, I should be able to do that.
Now, noticeably absent from today's meeting was the Christian Coalition and other groups that have vehemently opposed this measure in the past. It was perhaps not an indication, though, according to Senator Butch Miller, that they are no longer opposed to the measure.
I don't think they've given up at all. I think this is a very important issue for many communities, but I think these communities now will have a voice in their community, and that's the important part.
Phone calls and emails to the Georgia Christian Coalition were not returned before showtime, and SB 10 was given a due pass by the Senate State and Local Governmental Operations Committee. That means that measure now moves on to Senate rules before being taken up by a vote by the full Senate. On the House side today, the Public Safety Committee did give approval today to House Bill 72 that would require that the driver's license exams in Georgia be given only in English instead of in the 14 languages in which they're now offered. Representative James Mills, who sponsors that bill, told the committee that the bill is essentially fair.
We welcome everybody here. We're going to give you up to 10 years, if you're here on a visa, to learn how to take this test. And what Georgia already does is we provide a sample test on the internet that you can take. You only have to get 75% of the questions right to pass the test. And so, you know, you can memorize, but it points our society in a direction that I think is important, and a decision that this General Assembly made back in 1996, which was English is the official language of the state of Georgia.
The head of the Georgia Association of Latino Elected Officials, though, was one of those who spoke out against the measure. Jerry Gonzalez says that it's a violation of civil rights to prohibit non-English speakers from taking the exam in their native language while allowing those who are perhaps illiterate are being allowed to take the exam via an oral method. He also opposes a provision of the legislation that allows those holding visas to take the exam in their native language for up to 10 years.
There is no backup data for his claim that this is a public safety issue. And if there is no data, then I'm sorry, I do have to call it for what it is. This is an anti-immigrant bill at its face. With the exemptions for illiterate people and the exemption for the 10-year temporary license and then 10-year plus 1 day, then they're no longer they're to be considered a public safety hazard. All of that undermines any kind of public safety considerations that Representative Mills is making. The public safety considerations are a facade, they're a smokescreen, and they're not the real reason that Representative Mills is bringing this forward.
The House Public Safety Committee approved HB 72 by a vote of 8-2, and it's now in House rules. In the House today, there was also a poignant tribute to slain Trooper Chadwick LaCroix. House Speaker David Ralston said that this man had served the force with distinction despite the inherent dangers of his job.
That danger caught up with Trooper LaCroix on the night of December the 27th, when he was killed in the line of duty here in Atlanta on a detail protecting students at Georgia Tech and Georgia State University. Nothing we can do here today can help the feelings of Keisha LaCroix and her sons and the LaCroix family. But I think it is appropriate that we pause and let them know how deeply we appreciate that his ultimate sacrifice is their sacrifice too, and it was a sacrifice made on behalf of every man, woman, and child in the state of Georgia. We have a number of the men and women of the patrol with us today. Please help me show our appreciation to all of them, and I would ask them in the gallery and on the floor to stand, please. And to Keisha and the boys, we can't say or do anything that would make this pain I know any less, but as I present this resolution to you on behalf of this House, I just want to say very simply, we're proud of him.
Trooper LaCroix served the force for 2 years. And finally today, a visit by Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed, who of course is no stranger to the General Assembly.
Mr. Doorkeeper, let the mayor of the city of Atlanta and his escort committee be admitted to the chamber of this.
A triumphant return for Mayor Reed, who cut his political teeth serving this chamber. This morning, he encouraged unity as a tool to propel Georgia back into the #1 spot among southern states.
One of the 4 best lessons I ever had in my life in this house was across the street. I was working on a vote. I had been working real hard on it. You know how you all fall in love with the bills you're working on. And one of my rural friends put his arms around me, Mr. Speaker, because this bill I had got one of those friendly amendments on it. And you know those friendly amendments can sometimes kill a bill. And so he put an amendment on it, and a friend came over, one of my friends, he put his arm around me, Mr. Speaker, and he said, "You know, Kasim?" I said, "Kasim," but he said, "You know what I mean." Put his arm around me, he said, "Boy, I'm with you, win or tie." That was a very important lesson, because what he was showing me was, boy, you better get in there and work this thing out, because I want to be for you, but people elect you to win for them, and I think the people have elected us to win for them. You have the right coach under the leadership of this speaker, and then you've got extraordinary members and I hope you know you've got a partner across the street. Thank you all for giving me a moment. I really miss you.
Mayor Reed also told reporters today that he's going to continue to support the Atlanta Board of Education as it tries to resolve its accreditation issues. That is, so long as the board continues to comply with the rules of the accrediting agency. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm in Wandy Lawson for Primetime Lawmakers.
Wandy, before I let you go, one question about the Sunday sales bill. If it's passed by both the House and Senate and signed by the governor, how soon could retailers begin selling alcohol on Sundays in Georgia?
Well, Scott, you know, Senate Bill 10 does call for local counties and cities to actually call for their own referendum on the matter. So it would require voters to go to the polls and either approve or disapprove of Sunday sales. According to the chairman of the committee it passed out of today, though, it could be this year.
How about that? Watching progress move along. Thank you so much for that reporting, Wandy.
Thank you.
See you later. Also this evening, it's been a week for the legislative agenda announcements. House Democrats and Senate Republicans announced their plans on Tuesday. In tonight's leadership segment, Wandy Lawson asked Senate Minority Whip Steve Henson what Senate Democrats have in store. He says they're looking for greater public input and more transparency in government.
When we've seen billion-dollar tax cuts come in a conference committee report on the last night of session, and that's what we've seen, is conference committee reports on the last night of session, bills that never made it through a committee, and that coming to the floor to be voted on, that's not right. That's not fair. That's not transparent government. That's not what people elect us for. We had a bill a couple sessions ago that would have exempted the state from a certain fee they pay for water runoff. It never made it out of a House committee. So what happens? We see that bill, that law come in a conference committee report in the last night with 2 hours to go, and luckily it was voted down in a bipartisan measure. But many times those things are not voted down. They ran through at the last minute. You don't have time to, inform other legislators' constituents or the interested parties about it, and that gets passed. And we're going to be fighting those kind of issues on the last night of session that we think haven't been vetted by the public. We saw in the last 3 years after the economic problem started in Georgia that we passed more than 15 tax cuts. And we increased taxes on average citizens. When by the legislature, and I voted against it, when the Republicans raised taxes on the property of every Georgian by doing away with the long-held property tax exemption the state was giving rebate to the counties. When they did that, it was a massive tax increase to the average Georgian. And we're looking at this session trying to prevent that from happening again. We have serious concerns as a caucus about the recommendations of the Tax Reform Commission and many proposals that are being floated down here to put sales tax back on food while at the same time giving greater corporate tax breaks. Corporate tax structure in Georgia is not the problem to attracting business. The tax rate, can be looked at, possibly improved, but the real challenge to Georgia in bringing businesses is our educational system. Having an educated, motivated workforce.
We're hearing from the governor and other leaders here under the Gold Dome that there's a look being taken at restructuring the Quality Basic Education Act, and I'm wondering what impact do you think that might have on funding our schools?
We're pleased that the governor has talked about ending furloughs. That has been something that we've been fighting for the last 2 sessions to try to get back to where our teachers aren't being furloughed by the state. And we want people to know that the action of the state government are being felt around this state in local school systems. I know in one of my 2 counties, DeKalb and Gwinnett's being impacted too, they're talking about closing several schools. And I hope that people in DeKalb know that one of the reasons those schools are being closed is because the school system in DeKalb has been impacted by the policies of the last Republican administration, which really did not put public schools at a forefront of their agenda. They continually, under the last administration, cut public school funding, cut about $3 billion from public schools, and it just hasn't been able to be absorbed on a local level. So as a Democratic caucus, we want to go back and fight for public education in Georgia. We understand that charter schools and other opportunity programs exist for us to benefit the citizens of Georgia, but we need to make sure that every dollar we've got that we can put in the public schools goes there.
You, of course, represent a very diverse district in parts of Gwinnett and DeKalb counties. Immigration on the table this year. I'm wondering if there are some ways that you see that immigration needs to be better enforced here in Georgia?
Yeah, I'm very proud of the Democratic caucus. We have actually appointed a committee of our caucus to go around the state. They've been in Macon and Warner Robins area. They've had public hearings. They're going to go to Gainesville and around Georgia, getting input from the public. The Republicans set up a commission without one Democrat on it to deal with immigration, and pretty much stayed up in Atlanta trying to get, their view of the world. We're going around Georgia getting other people's input into the situation. We understand it's an important issue. We feel that lawbreakers, shouldn't be accepted by our state. We know there's national implications. We all also know that it's important that we handle this in an educated, informed way for the business of Georgia. So, we're not going to be mean-spirited, but we want laws enforced that are there on the books, and we're working progressively to try to get a policy or a statement forward. But right now, we want to listen to Georgians and kind of get their input into the process.
So one area that we haven't heard much discussion around is the area of ethics legislation. I'm wondering what the Senate Democratic Caucus might have to offer in that discussion.
One of the important things of being in a minority is making a minority party in the General Assembly is making sure that you hold the other side accountable for their actions. And we're highly concerned when we see things like the Speaker, going before the session on a very expensive trip, taking the family, and what perception that leads Georgia citizens to believe in their elected government. So we're pushing for ethics reform that will I support, in fact, elimination. I don't think anybody needs to buy me a cup of coffee. I think that, if I'm down here, I'm getting paid. Every legislator here gets a per diem. They can buy their own lunch and coffee. And possibly if there's a committee meeting or some function where you're all together, something can be worked out. So strong ethics legislation is something that I think we need to look at, and real penalties for people who don't file on time or disclose properly what their intents are.
Senator Steve Hinson is from Tucker. He's the Senate Minority Whip. And there's more to come tonight on Primetime Lawmakers. After this short break, I'll be joined live on set by Representative Jay Roberts, Chairman of the House Transportation Committee, and Department of Transportation Commissioner Vance Smith. We're going to talk transportation, so stay with us.
Watch GPB Sports Central with me, Gil Tyree.
I'm Mark Harmon.
I'm Nikki Noto.
And I'm John. GPB Sports. Sorry.
Nikki Noto.
And I'm John. GPB Sports Shoot.
Dude.
Yeah. Too soon.
I'm Nikki Noto.
GPB Sports Central. My bad.
And I'm John.
GPB Sports. So close.
Not even close.
Seemed close.
And I'm John.
GPB Sports Central, the leader in high school sports.
Can we make stuff cleaner and greener? Biodegradable plastics.
We've gone from this to this.
A new approach to fuel cell cars.
Here it is, folks. The future of American hydrogen storage.
Host David Pogue investigates new materials on the cutting edge of clean.
Seems like a scene from Willy Wonka.
Oh, and look at this! The soy foam is taking over!
Making stuff cleaner on Nova.
Tonight at 9 on GPB.
Welcome back to Primetime Lawmakers. You may recall late last session, the General Assembly passed a statewide transportation plan, which divides the state into 12 transportation districts. Those districts receive state money if they agree on regional transportation projects. Funding for this would come from a Transportation Special Local Option Sales Tax, or T-SPLOST. The measure must be approved by voters before it takes effect. The statewide transportation plan will be on ballots in the 2012 presidential preference primary. To find out how all this is supposed to work, I'm joined live in studio by Representative Jay Roberts, Chairman of the House Transportation Committee, and Commissioner Vance C. Smith of the Georgia Department of Transportation. Commissioner Smith was also chair of the House Transportation Committee during his time in the legislature. I appreciate you joining us this evening.
Thank you.
This is a complicated subject that people are going to hear a lot about here in the months to come, and transportation funding can be complicated. Can you explain in a nutshell how this whole regional plan is going to work? And why don't we start with you, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for several years we had talked about trying to come up with a way to fund transportation. And it had been an issue that had been back and forth for several years. And then finally last year we put our minds together and we said, all right, this is the year we've got to come up with funding. And when you look at the plan that we come up with, I think that you see that the Atlanta metropolitan area is not jumping up and down saying that, you know, we've won in this, nor is the rural part of the state. So that says that we've reached a pretty happy medium there, that everybody is pretty happy with what we've got. And the problem with transportation funding now is it's all based on motor fuel dollars. And those dollars continue to go down because, one, we've got automobiles that get more miles per gallon and are continuing to get better at that. So we had to come up with an alternative form. And we felt like that this would be a way to, one, have our local governments to have input into the projects that they wanted selected to fund in their region. And it's a regional transportation issue within each one of those regions, but also from a statewide look. And I think that at the end of the day, we've got a good program as we move forward, and we're getting some good positive results out there.
Commissioner Smith, this 12 districts across Georgia, and they can be very different in their needs, their aspirations. Some probably, to be quite honest, don't need a whole lot of improvements. Some are screaming for improvements. Stack that up for us and how that might play out.
Well, you have different needs in different parts of the state, and with the traffic and congestion in Atlanta, Georgia, improvement on interchanges, additional highways, more lanes, signalization, moving traffic better would be one thing. In rural Georgia, we have a lot of counties that still have a lot of dirt roads in those counties. So you have different needs in different parts of the state. But I think if everybody will remain patient and look at all the facts, take in all the facts, make suggestions to the roundtables in each one of those districts, and come up with a good project list. It's very similar to a county T-Splosh that's used nowadays. And so I think if they'll do that, have a lot of input, I think you can come up with a very good program of how to improve transportation, which will improve the economy.
So, like a long story short on this, each district is coming up with their own list of projects.
Right, that's correct.
All right.
And we have to remember, and there's coordination, our Director of Planning, Todd Long, is working directly with them. And you have to remember all roads cross the whole state of Georgia. They go north, south, east, and west. We want to make sure we have a good road network. This funding bill can look at transit, it could look at light rail, it could look at what the needs are in that area. But we need to make sure we look at Georgia statewide and improve transportation statewide.
What if you have, Representative Rivas, one of these districts that doesn't go along, maybe a couple of them, and does the rail stop there?
Well, you know, when we look at transportation in the state of Georgia, in the metropolitan area, it's really about getting a person from point A to point B in a reasonable amount of time. In the rural parts of the state, it's about economic development. It's about being able to bring in jobs and industries and be able to allow people to be able to afford a decent living. Well, if you've got this plan and if it ends up failing, you know, there is no backup plan. That's why we're out there right now trying to sell this plan. Listen, this is what we're going to concentrate on. This is our plan as we move forward. We've had a lot of contacts from people saying, well, can we tweak it? Can we just change this or change that? And our answer is no. This is the plan that we've got as we move forward. If you open it up and try to tweak it for one person, then the next person's going to want to tweak it, and you might as well start all over. So this is the plan.
Who's making input to these roundtables to come up with this list of projects? How's that working?
Well, right now, the planning director at GDOT, Todd Long, has been working with each region and helping them to create the criteria. And now you've got an executive committee in each one of those regions that's made up from the roundtable, and they're having input in with Todd as to how we're going to create this list and what this list is going to be. And then once that executive committee creates that list, they then bring it back to the full roundtable for them to say, okay, we like it, or no, we need to modify it, we need to make some changes.
Commissioner, what's the public process going to be in this? There's going to be public input for these lists?
Oh, yes, and we were in a meeting today, and the emphasis is for people to get involved, to understand what the needs are in their district, to let their local officials know, whether it's city, whether it's county, let the mayors, the county commissioners know what their interest is, and to have input into these roundtables. And I think communication, in communities throughout the counties and throughout the regions. That's very important. People want to hear from their citizens.
And this is coming up a year from August, right? Is when these votes will be.
That's right.
So we're looking at 15, 16 months or so to get this in front of the people.
Right.
All right. And they should look for notices and everything else for hearings and whatnot to show up to voice their concerns on this.
Or just attend commission meetings and city council meetings, let them know what they think. And, you know, transportation is about all modes now. It's not just roads and bridges. It's all modes.
Now, this doesn't hit, obviously, till 2012. We just mentioned that. Atlanta's famous or infamous congestion in the meantime, it isn't getting any better. Is there anything else that could be done between now and then to help Atlanta congestion?
Well, a couple things on the burner right now. We've been working very hard the last 18 months and with great cooperation through Governor Deal and his office and working with the legislature, with Chairman Roberts in the House and the Senate. We're looking at the Northwest Corridor, I-75, looking at managed lanes, not interfering with the general purpose lanes there now, so we're looking at 2 additional new lanes. That's in a process. We're also looking at a multimodal center, the MMPT, downtown near the Phillips Arena, area they call the Gulch, and we're looking at a development there. We have very interested developers that are looking at that now. We want to have a total transportation, transit, rail, commuter rail, bus, terminal. We want to have a focal point where we can bring people in, they can exit the trains or the buses and then catch another ride, go to and from work. So that's very important, we think, for the whole state of Georgia. The better we do as a group, the positive effect will be felt throughout the whole state of Georgia.
Is there any appetite at all for raising the motor fuel tax? Because don't we have one of the lowest state motor fuel taxes in the country?
Well, and Chairman Roberts mentioned a minute ago, more efficient cars. We stress at GDOT for people to telework or ride express bus, and so you're actually working against yourself. We're trying to improve the environment.
What about tying it to the price of gas instead of the number of gallons?
Right, and if you do, and there's just not a lot of positive input to raise that, because it would have to be raised in such a manner it'd make it too high on people that are having a tough time now.
Well, and I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier. If you continue to raise it, but you continue to get more miles per gallon, then you're defeating the purpose, because at some point you're going to be back in the same situation you are now.
More innovative ways to use the system we have now. Your hero units have been fabulous. That's a way to make sure that we get things off the road and get more used to the lanes we have. Any more of that coming along the way to help congestion?
Well, the heroes have been a big help to move those small accidents, even large accidents, off the road, because the more time that people spend sitting there waiting on that accident to move, it really backs up the traffic. So we really have a great group of people working in the heroes, and we're very proud of them. And we've had meetings that other states have come and looked at Georgia to see how to improve and start a hero unit in their area. That's one thing that we do. We try to talk to other states, work with other states in the meetings that we have across the United States, bring home new thoughts and ideas to improve transportation in Georgia, and that's a good thing.
All right, so things are on the burner now. They've already been planned, and we're planning ahead for these votes in 2012 for the big thing. That'll be the next big thing to get right down to it.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And right now, these roundtables and executive committees, they're meeting. So the public now has an opportunity to be able to go in and talk to them. They need to be able to say, this is something that is of concern to us. This is a project that we would like to see. So they have the ability to contact through their local elected officials. This is truly a local issue. I mean, they're having the input, and it's almost from the bottom up.
It's going to be fun to watch. Thanks so much for the update this evening. Appreciate you being here. And that's all the time we have for this evening. I want to thank our guest for being here with us tonight. And coming up tomorrow on Primetime Lawmakers, we'll go in-depth on illegal immigration legislation before the General Assembly. We'll continue our leadership interview series. House Minority Whip Carolyn Hewley is scheduled to appear, plus all the latest Capitol news tomorrow night here at 7 p.m. on GPB. If you'd like to see a repeat of this broadcast, 5:30 tomorrow morning is when you catch it on GPB. Coming up next, a special signing day edition of GPB Sports Central, so stay tuned. That's our broadcast for this 9th legislative day of the 2011 session. Thanks to both our guests for joining us tonight. For Wandy Lawson and the whole Primetime Lawmakers team, I'm Scott Slade. We'll see you here tomorrow night.
This is a GPB original production.
One of the biggest days in a high school athlete's life and one of the biggest days of a high school athlete's parent's life. It's signing day. On this special edition of GPB Sports Central, we will scour the great state of Georgia and bring you today the latest on National Signing Day around the great state of Georgia. Where do the biggest high school stars decide to go? We'll have that for you. So from Ringgold to Valdosta, from Savannah to LaGrange, GPB Sports Central is coming up next.